Welcome back for another video. This video is packed with information this week as we look at what the experts are doing for Gameweek23, which players they're buying, chip strategy, captaincy and the experts team. Double Gameweek24 is just around the corner now, and that's the immediate focus for making some nice gains next week. Let's get into it. Marcel Churi is the top ranked expert after a very respectable score of 57 last game week, which takes him up to 2.6k overall. There's a growing number of experts in the top 10k, we're up to 7 managers now, and 19 in the top 50k already. Like most of us, a captain blank for Marcel last week, but the rest of his team more than making up for it, with returns from Henderson, Munoz, Anderson, Eze and Bruno. Moving on to transfer activity, and it's a clean split this week. 40% are rolling, and 40% making one transfer. 13% are making 2 transfers, and 6% are making 3. And there's one wildcard active this week as well. We've got their team to look at later. So, with 60% making at least one transfer, who are the most bought and sold players by the experts? What's already really telling is just how different the most bought and sold players list is compared to the overall most transferred players list. And that's really where you can find an edge from this series. Like Kluivert is the most bought player this week, which really doesn't make much sense before Forest and Liverpool, unless you're on a wildcard I guess. Arguably nor does Wood, and surely not Foden with such terrible fixtures ahead. Using a range of data from top all-time managers really does provide some laser focus where we should be actually looking to make our moves. And this week it's the Liverpool trio, Gakpo, Trent and Alisson who are the most bought players. And it does make perfect sense when you think about it. Gakpo and Trent are both rested in the Champions League, and it's Ipswich home next, and then it's the double game week. 20% are buying Gakpo, 18% Trent, 11% Alisson, 2% Van Dijk, Konate and Luis Diaz. Trent and Salah clearly the best 2 to own. Beyond that though, I mean Gakpo, Alisson, Van Dijk and the rest all look like great options. In a nutshell, Gakpo and Luis Diaz are the highest ceiling but lower floor picks. Luis Diaz has started 68% of games this season, Gakpo 59%. So there is a possible start and a possible benching over the next 3 games. However, with Jota injured at the moment, their minutes do look a bit better, but even then Núñez is still a factor. So Trent's well in front for XGI among defenders this season, 6.74 XGI. Second is Vardy on 5.01, and then Munoz 4.74. If we filter it to all positions and look at the double gaming assets specifically, Trent's got higher XGI than McNeil and Dyer this season. Though of course Trent's is largely expected assists rather than expected goals. So Luis Diaz has actually got the second highest XGI of the doublers with 8.19 this season, and he's second best after Salah for minutes per XGI, which is always a useful metric as well given the massive variation in minutes played at this stage. While Gakpo seems to be flavour of the month, Diaz is the same price with better underlying numbers and he started more games this season, some food for thought there. I suppose the last thing I should add on that is Luis Diaz is a midfielder and Gakpo is a forward on FPL, and it just depends on what you need in your team and what fits in. Let us know in the comments which way you're tripling up on Liverpool assets, or are you just going to double up and go assistant manager, or are you just doubling and leaving it at 2? So Jackson is the most sold, 17% getting rid, largely for Gakpo. Greaves, Timber and Raya joint second most sold with 8%. 4% are buying in Bumo. Amidst all the double game week hype, it should be noted that Brentford are about to hit a great run of games. He's only 7.8 mil. 140 points this season, ranks 3rd most across all positions. He's on penalties and he's on some set pieces, so don't sleep on Mbumo as an option. Now Everton's double does in fairness have Leicester home first, which is a very good fixture, plus the potential new manager bounce. Maybe we should be considering some Everton players as well. Lots of the experts are already, 9% buying Mikalenko, 2% Calvert-Lewin, 1% Pickford. Next week's going to be a decisive week for the Everton and Liverpool assets, and which are the most popular among the experts, so make sure you are subscribed for a double gaming special next week. Let's move on to the chip overview. Just one chip active this week, which is Stephen Wader, and he's made a big call and activated his second wildcard. He's got a couple of top 10k finishes with his name. Let's have a look at his team then. Interestingly, he's not bought into the double game week hype. It's Henderson in goal, it's Howson, Trent and Guehi in defence, Kluivert, Palmer, Salah and Mbumo in midfield, Watkins, Isak and Havertz up top, and on the bench Fabianski, Murillo, Winks and Van den Berg. Here's what he had to say. Given that I held both Haaland and Foden for their favourable fixture run, it was always the plan to wildcard in Gameweek23, now that they're heading into a really tough upcoming schedule for the next 5 game weeks. Palace seem to have turned a corner, so I've decided to keep doubling up on their defence, whilst they still have nice fixtures ahead. I've deliberately gone with a cheaper route into Bournemouth, Palace and Forest defences, but all three players are guaranteed starters while also doing well for bonus points. The thought of not owning Trent for Liverpool's next 4 fixtures, including the double game week, is too scary to even consider. Palmer, Salah and Mbeumo need little explanation, with Mbeumo playing some leaky defences in upcoming weeks. Kluivert may seem like a knee-jerk reaction, but there were 3 quality goals last weekend, which pains me to say as a Newcastle fan. He is an excellent budget option with a high ceiling for points, where he's also scored against quality opposition in Arsenal and Chelsea. The forwards all have decent upcoming fixtures, where it's a close call between giving Watkins the captaincy ahead of Salah this game week. My subs are cheap options who all play regularly, where I've never been a fan of a strong bench due to the frustration of leaving points on it. I'm not planning on using the assistant manager or the bench boost chips till later in the season, so I will be banking transfers down the line before activating them. Thanks for sending in, Wader, best of luck on the wildcard. Onto captaincy, and we'll wrap this up in about 10 seconds, as it's 100% Salah this week, not a single expert looking anywhere else. Given that we've got Chelsea and City facing each other, that's enough to put you off Palmer or Haaland. Isak does have Southampton away, who's the only real alternative option that leaps out, but no one's going there either. Onto the experts team for Gameweek 23 then, the template team, or in other words the most owned players across the thousands of players they've picked in all their teams. And it's Raya in goal, it's Trent, Gabriel and Hall in defence, Palmer, Gordon, Salah and Rodgers in midfield, Isak, João Pedro and Wood up front, Fabianski, Ahmad, Munoz and Robinson on the bench. How many have you got from the team this week? It's an absolute nightmare picking the best 11 here. We've got Ahmad and Munoz on the bench, which I think makes sense over Rodgers and Wood. So as it stands, Salah and Trent are currently the only Gameweek 24 doublers, although next week's video will undoubtedly be almost entirely double Gameweek players joining their teams, and I'll probably see 1 or 2 more added to the template team. So Ahmad joins the team in place of Sarr this week, but he's on the bench. Bruno's actually a few percent more owned than Ahmad, but Ahmad's in to keep it within budget. So just one last thought on Trent then. So he's 29% owned overall, but 94% among the experts, which really emphasises just how highly rated he is by the top all-time managers. That might hit 100% next week or just under. Moving on to the experts' final thoughts and tips for Gameweek 23, here's everything they had to say this week. FPL Pattern says, I'm planning to do Cunha to Gakpo, as it looks good with Liverpool's upcoming fixtures and Cunha's uncertainty. I might do a hit next game week to bring Trent in though. FPL USA Brian says, I'm sitting in the top 10k and I'm going to be rolling to 5 free transfers to then attack the double aggressively with 5 to 6 doublers. FPL Creed's looking at Jimenez to Calvert-Lewin and he says, the transfer's not a given, however with 5 out of 5 free transfers at my disposal, something has to be done. The most likely lines to avoid burning a transfer is something along the lines of Raul Jimenez to Calvert-Lewin or Ndiaye, or a defender transfer like Anderson to Mykolenko for example. It's more of a first thoughts territory still though. My chip strategy is most likely going to be assistant manager in 24, triple caps in Gameweek 33, wildcard in 35 and bench boost in 36. FPL Joe says, this could be a good week to make an early move for a Liverpool asset ahead of their double game week in 24. With Ipswich at home this weekend, there could be returns for attackers and defenders among Slot's troops. And lastly, FPL Sis says, all about the Gakpo train. A week early feels right with Ipswich and the midweek rest, but will he get both in the double and Wolves? Unlikely. Upside pick as I'm chasing. Go well everyone. Thanks for watching, and make sure you are subscribed for a double game week special next week. See you soon for the next one.